Hi, this is Jonas. Welcome to another episode of the Bonsai Wire podcast. Today with me is
Eric Schrader.
And the two of us have been doing a lot of things other than podcasting lately.
Well, I'm not technically responsible for podcasting.
No, you're not on the hook for that like I am. But we have been busy with a whole bunch of stuff. And the main thing we've been busy with that we wanted to talk about today is the upcoming Pacific Bonsai Expo.
So we've had all kinds of things changing in the background, and we haven't told you guys about any of it yet.
Mostly due to a combination of these weren't all exciting things, and some of them were just plain dereliction of duty on our part to not share what's been going on. But one of the first things we did actually through a big chunk of last year is we set up a nonprofit organization for the Pacific Bonsai Expo. So the Pacific Bonsai Expo is now a California not-for-profit corporation that has 3 founding board members.
And in addition to Jonas and I, that would be Andrew Robson as the 3rd founding board member. And the upshot of it being a nonprofit is basically 2 little things. One is that you can make a donation and have it be tax deductible. And the other is that the website is now .org rather than .com.
Our goal for doing this was we were thinking, what can we do to increase participation throughout the years? And we thought it might be easier to encourage participation, whether in the form of donation or volunteering or anything, if we became a nonprofit. And so we are successfully on the other side of that now, and we are a fully functioning non-for-profit organization.
I got to tell you, it was a super exciting process.
It was pretty great. So that's all we're going to say about that.
If any of you ever want to make a nonprofit, just, find somebody else to do it for you.
Yeah. We highly recommend that. And one of the upshots is one of the first things we want to do as a nonprofit is we actually want to share all of the images we made at the last Pacific Bonsai Expo for free with everybody. And so we're actually going to be releasing all of these images under a Creative Commons license so that pretty much anyone can do whatever they want with the images from the event as long as they cite the source.
I guess there's technically the only images that the expo itself owns are the ones that are the studio shots from
the book.
From the book, because the others, we had a little snafu with getting official photography done, but they're already available on Flickr.
And so we'll post a link to that in the show notes. But we're excited about that because I know that I've gotten a number of requests over the years, and I expect Eric has as well, where people want to use images for a newsletter, for an article, for whatever it happens to be. And we will happily let you use those images. And all you need to do is pretty much say, who took the image and where they came from the expo. And we'll be doing the same going forward.
Back in my intellectual property licensing days, I always loved a Creative Commons license. So if you guys don't know what it is, look it up. It's super useful, and it basically means that all you have to do is just tell everybody where the photo came from.
It's pretty great. Oddly, Eric and I both have backgrounds in image rights checking for academic publishing. One on the book side, one on the peer review journal side. And that being about as exciting as forming a nonprofit, we'll leave that there as well.
Not a really great podcast topic, at least for this podcast.
Not for this audience. So anyway, we're excited that we're set up and that we have those images available. And the other thing we've done, and we really haven't talked about it as much publicly yet, are the submissions. As of today, that we just have the last few days of the month are ticking by, and that will close out the submission period for people to submit trees to be considered for this fall's event.
Yeah, I think the submissions are going better than last time, slightly. Maybe not 100% perfect. If you are out there listening to this and the submission period is still open, then you can still send them to submissions at pacificbonsaiexpo.org just for the next however many days it is between now and the end of April.
Yeah, April 30th is the deadline for submissions. And what we can say is that we have over 100 submissions so far for roughly 75 slots in the show, give or take. And we have been thrilled at the response. A lot of people kept reassuring us, you'll get lots of submissions. It'll be fine. Lots of people will submit after such a popular first show. And the more we thought about it, what came to mind is, where are all of these great trees going to come from that weren't in the show last time?
Well, I mean, I think that there are a lot of great trees out there, and people just have to like commit to showing them, which means that you're committing to finding a stand and getting the tree ready and doing good work on it and all that sort of thing. But I know that I have been chasing down trees from prior exhibitors in my own circle, as well as just sort of encouraging people in various venues when I give a talk or something at a club to submit trees. So we're still looking for those submissions, and doesn't matter really how good the tree is. We'd love to see it and have it be considered.
It's been fun thinking through when we decided to make a policy that you can't show any tree in 2 consecutive events. We started thinking, oh, wow, although there were 75 displays, I forget how many total trees that was. It was probably close to 150 trees, if you include the medium displays and the showing displays. There's a lot of total trees. And it's like, okay, cross all those off the list.
Well, I mean, it's funny because I have 3 about Shohin Kishu junipers that sit on my deck railing and I look out on all the time. And with only you can't use them 2 in a row. So I had 1 in the show last time. I'm going to have 1 in the show this time. And that leaves me, I guess, actually 2 for next time. But it makes you think that, like, oh, if I want to do a Shohin display, even if it's just 2 or 3 trees, I have to plan this out because what will I do next time? And I think you just go all in. Don't worry about next time.
And I'm kind of going the same way. Trees change a lot over 2 or 4 years. And so if you give a tree a break for a couple years, at the fastest a tree can come back is 4 years after the first time it was showed. And so that's a lot of opportunity for upgrades and modifications in the way a tree looks, which is kind of one of our goals. But the other goal is we want just to encourage the creation of more expo level material. We want to see as much as possible. And we know that we've had to think in our own collections, oh, what are we going to show this year? How are we going to find some stuff for that?
I keep rolling all my trees out.
Because?
Well, I mean, I took all the show trees from last time and stuck them into growing containers,
oh, there you go.
Larger containers. So then, I mean, they weren't eligible to be in the expo anyway, but we just did a local show in San Francisco this weekend. And I was like, oh, I can't show any of those trees because they're all in terracotta pots.
I did the same thing with a couple trees. I thought, okay, you guys are going back into a training pot or a terracotta pot or something. And they're all doing great. They look wonderful, but they're not exactly going in an exhibit anytime soon.
Yeah.
And so it's been really fun. There's 2 kind of big changes we've made related to this whole submission process. One is that we are limiting not the number of submissions you make, but the number of trees you can exhibit in the event. Whereas last time we put no caps on how many trees you could show at the expo. Whereas this time you can submit as many trees as you want, but we will select no more than 3 per exhibitor.
That's 3 displays, though. So
3 displays, not 3 trees.
Yeah, so if you have a medium display with 2 trees, that still just counts as 1. And if you have a Shohin display with 8 trees, and it still counts as 1.
Exactly. And so if you have the collection that allows you to submit 3 Shohin displays, you can have a whole lot of trees, 18 trees in a show.
That would be impressive.
And we welcome that.
Yeah.
We'd love to see that. So that's one thing. And our main goal for making that change is that we want more total exhibitors to participate in the event. We want to have as many people as possible participate. And this is a really good way of doing that. So just out of the gates, by default, we're going to have more exhibitors than we had last time.
And I just want to remind everyone, we are both exhibitors, ostensibly, assuming my 1 submission so far actually gets in. And I haven't been looking at the submissions because I'm on the jury. So Jonas has been compiling all the submissions, and it'll be a big surprise for me when they come around. But the exhibitors are the stars of the show, and we tried to make that really clear in the first expo, but I think it's actually going to be even more clear this time because there's a couple of things that exhibitors are going to get to do that vendors don't get to do, regular visitors don't get to do. Do you want to talk about that, Jonas?
Yeah, we might as well get right to that. Is the evening before the exhibit opens on Friday evening, that would be October 25th, I believe, we are going to host a reception for exhibitors and donors.
Yeah, so it will be a chance to kind of socialize in the exhibit space and be able to enjoy more elbow room than maybe on Saturday and Sunday. The vendors will not be there. The vendor space won't be open for transactions anyway, and we'll just be sort of having a little party on Friday night.
Yeah, one of the big pieces of feedback we got are people wanted more time to enjoy the show, and this is one way to do that. And the goal is that it'll be lower crowds and kind of less bustle, but people will get to spend time actually checking out the trees. And it should be fun because the lighting will be different than it'll be during the day, and you'll be able to spend as much time as you want with the submissions that evening.
Yeah, because if we hadn't mentioned it, we're at a new venue this time, and it is more than twice the size of the Bridge Yard. And it's not at all the same as the Bridge Yard, even though it's sort of the same era of architecture. And it does have natural light, a couple of big skylights, and a bank of windows on one end. But the Friday night party will be your only chance to see the exhibit under just artificial light. So it'll have that kind of moody dinner sort of
glow
lighting, which would be different than the regular lighting during Saturday and Sunday open hours.
And so the only way you can attend that is by donating or by getting a tree in the show. And so those are going to be our kind of fancy tickets for the weekend.
And like I said, to start off this portion of it, I think that the exhibitors are the stars of the show, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to do this, just to kind of,
thank them for participating, and all of the energy that goes into preparing these trees for exhibit is huge, and we wanted to recognize that.
Hopefully not going to wear them out after having lugged their trees around to get photos taken and then doing the judging, so they're mentally tired, and now they're going to have to hang around and party. You're under no obligation as an exhibitor to be there, but it should be fun.
And that's the idea, is that Friday is our second day of setup. We set up Thursday and Friday, and then we'll we need to complete all the setup by 3 p.m. for our judging. We'll be judging the exhibit. At least the exhibitors will be judging the trees in the exhibit from 3 to 5. And then at some point after that, we'll be opening up for the celebration of the event.
Nighttime.
Yeah, so we're already looking forward to that one. I was going to say we're feeling tired already because it's like, wow, that's a lot of setup that we have to do those days. But it'll be really nice to be able to sit and enjoy it. Because I remember walking out of the hall Friday before the show last time, and Eric and I were kind of reflecting on, wow, this came out really, really well.
It was really beautiful. And as the sun was setting, a little bit of dusk light in the Bridge Yard and the balance between the dusk, like that golden hour kind of thing. Maybe it's not golden hour, after golden hour. But anyway, some of the photos that were taken during that last hour before we left the building were really beautiful.
It was. And then as we were leaving that's right, one of those evenings I remember some of the exhibitors showed up fairly late. And so actually we're hanging out there in the dark, and it was kind of fun to see it under the lighting, because it did have the room had a different glow to it under that. So that's one of the big things we're excited about, is the Friday evening event.
And then I guess next on the list, speaking of more space, is that we are going to have a lot more room for vendors to participate. We weren't able to have everyone who wanted to participate last time participate. So we're hoping that is the case, and we have a lot more vendor tables available, as well as better spacing between the vendor tables so that it's easier to get around. We're anticipating a larger crowd than last time, but in anticipation of that, we have a larger space. And so it should be really fun and really good for the attendees and for the vendors alike.
We're expecting roughly, at minimum, about 50% more vendor tables than we had last time. Demand has still been very, very high for tables, and we're actually going to start sending out contracts to vendors almost immediately next week, so that we're in the process of that right now. But we're going to have most of the people that were there last time will be coming back, and we'll have a bunch of new faces as well. And it'll be very easy to get to them, because as soon as you walk in the door, you'll be faced with just all kinds of wares from whatever these folks will be bringing.
Yeah, just like last time, we're going to have everything kind of in one big space. There's not going to be a lot of division. There will be a division between the show and the vendor area, but it is going to be a big open area where you can kind of wander back and forth between the show area and the vendor area. And I think that should make for some interesting interactions and thoughts.
And the one part of the event that will be outside of that is we actually have a couple bonus spaces. We've got a whole concourse and an entry area that'll give us some opportunities. One of the most exciting for those of you that were at the first event will be we will be serving food at the event.
I think we haven't actually mentioned the name of the venue yet. It's the Henry J. Kaiser Center in Oakland. It's pretty much directly adjacent to Lake Merritt, and you can actually see the Bonsai Garden Lake Merritt across the lake from the venue. It is basically just being finished, a complete remodel of this historic venue, and it's, what is it, like 35,000 square feet worth of usable space, something like that?
Yeah, altogether it's getting really close to that. It's huge.
Yeah. So not only the main area is twice the size of the bridge yard, but then we also have about that much space again in adjacent areas. So that's what Jonas is talking about. We're going to fill those up with some programs or other things that come to mind.
Yeah, and one of them is food, and there's actually literally a concessions booth there, and we are planning to make food available on premises, which is very exciting. It's a very short walk to lots of other restaurants and places to eat, but we will have some right there on site.
Yeah, much more central than the bridge yard was.
And there's some other benefits to that too. So in addition to being a quick walk and or shuttle ride to the garden up at Lake Merritt, the Golden State Bonsai Federation's Bonsai Garden at Lake Merritt, but we're also right next door to the Oakland Museum.
I've never been there, actually.
Oh.
It's funny. I've lived in Northern California almost my entire life, and I've never been there. I don't have any excuses.
They have Suiseki as part of their permanent collection.
I had heard that because Janet mentioned it.
Yep. Yeah, it's a fantastic museum. They've just redid their beautiful rooftop garden and their gardens, their grounds, really pretty area. And so that's adjacent to the building that we're going to be in.
Literally like across the street.
Not even across the street. It's like next door.
Yeah. And isn't the
Merritt College or Laney College is across the street.
Okay. But the landscape architect who designed their garden is reasonably well known. If I remember Googling it a month ago or something like that. Anyway, it's also an attraction, I think, for people coming to the area.
It is. So that'll be nice. So that's really what got us so excited is we're one block from public transportation. We're next door to a museum. We are a brief just across the lake from the Bonsai Garden. So there will be plenty of other things to do right there next to the venue.
Central Oakland.
And so some other things about the venue to mention are that we have one of our spaces will be for the food and kind of entry area. We'll also have a space for some light programming, and we'll have more details on that. But we do want to have some talks, demonstrations, other kind of things so that there will be some entertainment and or education opportunities over the course of the weekend.
Yeah, I think it was one of the things that maybe we just didn't sort of get to last time was designing programs. And part of that was that we didn't really have a good space for them to happen in the event of rain on that weekend. We don't really have any control over the weather when we're planning something a year out. So it was sort of almost a last minute kind of thing that we ended up putting them on last time. And I think that was kind of apparent. It was just a couple of short, simple programs.
And so we're planning on doing some similar kinds of things, but there will be some much more bonsai focused events for some of those programs, but we'll have a lot more to share on that, as we get closer to the event. And we do have some outdoor space as well. There's some other fun indoor and outdoor spaces we might be able to take advantage of. So we're still actually in the dreaming mode of how we're going to be using all the different spaces at the venue.
I wonder if the roof leaks.
We'll find out.
Just for background on that, when we were one of our visits to the bridge yard, not during the actual show, but in one of the prep visits, it was raining and there was water coming into the building.
Yeah, there were considerable puddles, and you could ask if it was leaking, but that's almost impolite at that point. It's kind of obvious that there were leaks at that point.
Old buildings have character.
And so that's one of the fun things about the Kaiser is the Kaiser Center for the Arts is over 100 years old, and it was one of the premier event spaces in the area. I think the Grateful Dead played there something like 57 times. I mean, I saw Weezer there. I think that was the last show I went to.
Someone told me that it holds the record for the most Grateful Dead programs in one place.
That sounds right. In fact, I just met a guy that said he went to all but 2 of them.
Yeah, I was never really a Grateful Dead fan, but there's a lot of history there.
There is. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke there, and there have been sporting events there. There have been concerts. And so what happened is the building was in use as a performing arts center for, almost 100 years. And I grew up going to a lot of shows there. And then they closed it, and they were going to make commercial real estate kind of out of it. That plan completely changed just a few years ago, and they decided to reopen it as an event space. And that's why we're taking advantage of it in its first year back online. They've only just started hosting events earlier this year, and they're actually wrapping up some of the final touches on some of the spaces within the complex between now and the event. So it'll be freshly converted space for exactly what we want to be using it for.
Yeah, Jonas and I went down there a couple of days ago to do some photography so that we have things to share on social media to get you guys sort of interested in and understanding the space. And while we were there, we set up a couple of trees on a table in the middle of the room and happened to have the crew painting one of the walls in the background with a giant, it wasn't a scissor lift, it looked like a big spider or something. And we had some fun with a guy in a construction outfit looking like he was picking leaves off of the tree and or doing something behind it that I won't mention.
Exactly. Well, you might be seeing some of these photos on the Pacific Bonsai Expo Instagram account one of these days. But it was we've made actually half a dozen visits probably to the venue already. They've got a great staff, and they've been working with us, and it's been fun to start working through the process, because having done the event now this massive one time, we kind of know what to expect, and we kind of know what questions to ask. And so it feels fantastic to be on our end this time, having done it once, because there are so many fewer unknowns, despite the changes to the event, despite the new venue. A lot of stuff is in place, and that's been working really well and making things a lot smoother for us.
I just want to mention for those people that really loved the Bridge Yard, because I absolutely love the Bridge Yard, that we thought long and hard about ways to make the Bridge Yard work for this event for 2024, and ultimately decided that it was more important to be able to sell tickets and sell table space to vendors for more people to participate in the event, because we did not like to have to cut off ticket sales and tell people that they couldn't come last time. It was really kind of heartbreaking for us.
Yeah, the Bridge Yard is never far from mind, and we're actually always thinking about ways in which we can continue to use the venue for other kinds of events we might do down the road. But if we could just double or triple it in size, we'd be there in a heartbeat, because it's hard to beat the light and the look that building offers. It's just awesome.
We should just suggest that. I'm sure they'll just double the size of the building for us.
It's easy to keep things historical and double them, right?
Yeah, right. Caltrans will get right on it.
But we, like Eric said, we actually spent months looking into tent rentals, outdoor space, using areas that are off public or not safe for public viewing. But what we kept coming back to is it did not feel right to host an event that we would be telling people they can't come to, because we couldn't meet the full demand last time. And expecting a greater response this time, it wasn't even close. And so we really opted for the next best thing, which was another historical building in Oakland, not a full 5 miles away. And so checked a lot of boxes.
So one of the advantages, the Bridge Yard had a decent amount of parking, but outside of the actual parking that was there, it was very difficult to get people to and from, which is why we had a shuttle bus set up to take people back and forth to Emeryville. And this time it's going to be easier. There's a lot more options, one of which is that it's 1 block away from the BART station.
Yeah. So right around the corner from the BART station.
So if you're so inclined to take public transit, and you don't have a lot of heavy stuff to carry, you do not need to take a bus or a shuttle or anything. If you can walk a block, you can take BART into Oakland and get off at which station?
Lake Merritt.
At the Lake Merritt station. That makes sense. And walk down to the venue.
Yep, just right around Laney College right there. You're kind of walking around the corner. In terms of the parking, we have limited parking on site just like last time, and we'll very likely be selling parking passes this time. Beyond that, the Oakland Museum has a lot, and it looks like we'll be running a shuttle again to the event hotel. Same hotel as last time, the Hilton House over in Emeryville.
There's a lot of parking on streets adjacent to the venue. We're just not sure that any of that is really a great idea, just from the standpoint of parking regulations being all over the map. I once got a parking ticket in Oakland for street sweeping, even though the street sweeper had already gone by. I was kind of irritated about that, but
so we recommend sticking to lots whenever possible.
Or, whatever you're comfortable with.
Exactly. And so those are kind of the main things to share about the building. We'll be sharing a lot more pictures of the place between now and the event time. But it's given us the space to kind of dream how big a show we want, how big a vendor area we want, how comfortable we want everyone to feel. And our overriding goal is to make sure it is a good experience for the people who come. And that's why we're thinking that means being able to sell tickets if someone wants to attend. It means that it's not too crowded inside. And it means that people have good opportunities to both spend time with the trees and or spend time shopping as they see fit.
Yeah. So what is coming up? What can people expect from us after hearing this?
We are now at the end of April, and so we are currently planning to be selling tickets next month in May. And that's really the big exciting thing that's coming up.
And if you are a vendor listening to this, we will be getting in touch with you like Jonas mentioned. And if you are a vendor and have not reached out to us, feel free to do so. We will be automating as much of the vendor and ticketing process as possible, meaning that you would be purchasing something off the website, whether that's your tickets or your vendor space. And that just makes it easier for us and easier for you. You can do it at your leisure.
Yeah, so we'll be figuring that out. And one other thing we wanted to mention is actually about the show itself. We've made a few changes to the award structure for the trees that'll be on display.
And you're going to have to cover this because this conversation initially happened months ago, and now I think I've forgotten half of it. But you start.
It was a lot of months ago. And so last time we had 5 categories. We had small, medium, large deciduous, large broadleaf, and large conifer, and a Best in Show award. So those are the awards we had. And the big change is that we are simply dividing the large category into 2. We're going to have large and extra large. And so that brings us to a total of, I think, 9 awards. Shohin, medium, and then we have both large and extra large for deciduous trees, separate from broadleaf evergreens, separate from conifers. And then a Best in Show, just like before.
So actually, there's just more prizes in general.
More prizes in general. In terms of what those prizes mean is we are no longer offering cash rewards for the winners. There will be trophies, possibly certificates, but the sponsors, the overriding feeling from the sponsors is they wanted to support the event rather than, or at least primarily above supporting the participants. And so the sponsorships will be going toward ensuring the sustaining the organization itself rather than being doled out in terms of prize money.
Plus, everybody knows that the real prize is getting to brag about winning the prize.
It's fully bragging rights. And so now more people will get the bragging rights now that there's more awards available. And what was interesting was trying to figure out, a lot of feedback last time was people felt awkward that 19-inch trees were competing with 48-inch tall trees. And so we said, okay, we'll just pick a line in the middle. And then we started thinking about, well, that may not make sense if you have a really tall, skinny tree versus a very low, wide tree. So how are we going to come up with a way to divide that up? At the same time, we were thinking about the display spaces. And last time, some of our largest trees were displayed on 8-foot wide tables as opposed to 6-foot wide tables, which also didn't feel perfect because they were being judged the same, even though they were displayed a little bit differently in at least the size of the space. The elegant solution then became large trees would be displayed on 6-foot tables. Extra large trees would be displayed on extra large 8-foot tables.
And somehow we arrived at the division between large and extra large being a math formula, a combination of the height and the width. So is it over 34 inches and a total height plus width equal to or greater than 64? Did I get it
64
right?
is the magic number. And well, probably that might be a little fuzzy depending on how the submissions actually look, but that is the goal. Height plus width at 64, that's kind of the breaking point. 65 or bigger will be extra large, 63 or smaller will be large.
And we literally walked around Jonas's yard looking at the trees and measuring the width and height and thinking to ourselves, okay, would this tree look better in an 8-foot space, or would it look better in a 6-foot space? And that total height plus width is where we landed in terms of a good dividing line. And
it oddly felt pretty good. Like Andrew confirmed that in his garden, but we looked at a lot of trees. I actually recategorized all of the trees from the last expo to make sure that it felt right. And so we did an absurd amount of checking, and it seemed to check out. The big variable is really what people submit, how big those trees end up being.
But there's, like you started to mention, there's one other upshot is that you actually don't get to choose which size table you're on. If you're in the XL category, you're on the 8-foot table. And if you're in the large category, you're on the 6.
Which makes sense, because if there's a tall, slender tree, it might work just fine on a 6-foot space. And if you've got a really wide tree, it'll look fantastic in an 8-foot wide space.
Now, what are we going to do with a 6-foot tall tree?
We might have a 6-foot tall tree that's been submitted.
And so if is there a double XL category? I need a 3XL, please.
I think you'll just get a T-shirt if you bring in a tree that big.
But I mean, I think we, I think we can adapt the exhibit to accommodate almost any size tree. I mean, I don't know if we can drive a forklift into the venue. I haven't asked, but
there might be ways to solve large tree ingress and egress.
A 6-person tree, maybe.
Yeah.
The old Japanese method of measuring size by how many people it takes to carry it.
That's right. And so right now we've got a really fun mix of trees. We've got a few very large trees, and we actually have at least one mame submission so far.
Not from me. My only submission is a medium-size tree. Actually, one medium, one shohin.
I've got submissions in a couple of different categories. Yeah. No shohin yet, though. I still may submit a shohin display. We'll see.
Same. I think that if any of you are thinking of submitting a shohin tree or shohin exhibit, as few as 2 trees with the right stands and whatnot, that the category could use some more submissions.
Other than that, I haven't been checking how the categories fall. I've just been kind of watching the overall flow of submissions just to make sure we're getting enough of the trees we're looking for. And I'm thrilled to say, yes, we have been getting the trees we're looking for. So we're really, really happy about that. I also think it'll be a treat for attendees in that there'll be a lot of trees that people haven't necessarily seen before. So obviously some of the attendees will be familiar with some of the trees, and that'll be true for most people, but I know big chunks of the community will be seeing some trees for the first time that'll be pretty spectacular.
Yeah, so the takeaway is you need to have more trees in your garden so that you have alternate trees to exhibit every 2 years, right?
Which is how we were trained, in Boone's Club back in the day, is you needed a minimum of 2 show trees to join the club so you could show them every other year because you couldn't show them in 2 consecutive exhibits.
It'll be interesting to see in the third one how many repeats we get from the first, because that was a thing at BIB.
A lot of people were on the every other year plan.
Yeah, it was like, this year is odd and even.
That's actually how I remember when the club's first show was 2000, I believe. And I can actually keep track to this day of which trees I showed in the first 4 shows because it was on I had pretty much had 2 conifers that were show worthy at the time. And so one was even years, one was odd years. It was that simple.
I think the first couple of years I didn't have really any show trees. And then once I got on board far enough to have a show quality tree, I was definitely exhibiting one particular pine every other year for, I think, 3 times.
Yeah, that's often how it worked. I know that in my garden, I'm not currently planning on submitting any of the trees that were in the first show. So it would be all new trees again for the third show. That's what I'm currently planning.
I guess I'm not planning on it either, but plans can change, especially when you're nail biting about whether or not you're going to have enough submissions.
Yeah, and we'll see what submissions come in. That's right. Exactly. It's always good to have backups.
Right. Yeah, I might submit something else just so that we have more backups or more diversity.
As expected last time, a few trees dropped out during the year. And so we actually called up a couple people to fill in with some of our alternates. We asked the jury to pick their favorite. What they do is they actually rank their top 90 trees among the submissions, and then we break that down into the show trees and then alternates. And we actually did fall back on that list, which was super helpful because not every tree looks great every day of every year, and we are expecting some subs. So that's one reason why we're personally thinking of adding in extras, whether to fill in for our own trees or for other trees that drop out. It can be handy to have extra submissions in there.
Yeah, and it can be the tree or the person. You know, if you were planning a trip and then something comes up and you have an emergency, you can't make it, that's what the alternate list is for, to make sure that we have the show. And the show is roughly the same size tree-wise as it was last time. So there's not a big change in that, but we're just planning on more space in the exhibit, just the same as what I mentioned about the vendors, more space in the exhibit so that when you have a person on one side of the aisle looking at a tree and a person on the other side of the aisle looking at a tree, you can actually walk between them. And so I think we actually paced it out and we had enough space for kind of 6 people to stand in the aisles, lined up.
Decent amount of space. And just as important, we've actually reconfigured things so that you won't need to walk through the exhibit to get to the vendor area.
Yes.
So that there'll be more traffic in the vendor area, less traffic in the exhibit area.
Although we haven't finalized the layout completely.
Yeah, I was going to say actually nothing's been finalized, but that's our working theory so far.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. One of our primary concerns with layout is always the security of the exhibit. And so we don't want people who have purchased something to walk through the exhibit area, because then it becomes unclear to the security guards whether or not they
should be carrying that tree.
Right, yeah, whether they're trying to steal something or they're just walking one of their purchases out. So.
That's right. On that note, we were going to be making a big call for volunteers in a couple months. I know we've been getting a lot of questions about that. We are still getting in line some really, really exciting back-end stuff, like Eric said, figuring out how to deliver PDF files through the website and get the ticket sales lined up and plugins for websites. Just, great, exciting stuff.
Riveting. And
once all that's in place, then we can finally start, selecting some kind of committee chairs for the different aspects of the event. And then they will determine the resources needed to staff those different areas of the event. We'll put it all in a big website again, and you'll be able to sign up for your volunteer opportunities. So as soon as we have that, we'll make that available online. But I'd guess that's more like at least a month out at this point.
Yeah, and it's going to be largely the same type of process, if not the exact same tools. If you volunteered last time and you want to volunteer again, you will most likely have that opportunity. And we can't do anything, just the two of us, this far in advance. We have to get through certain hoops before we can turn people loose in terms of signing up volunteers and scheduling and coordinating everything.
Exactly. And the one funny thing is, the first time we ran this event, we kind of like to joke, even though it was kind of 100% true, is running the expo was more or less a 6-month full-time unpaid job on top of everything else. Does that sound fair?
Yeah.
And so far, we're aiming to make it no more than a 5-month full-time unpaid job this year.
I will say that all the framework that we put in place last time, a lot of the work that we did is still there, and so we didn't have to duplicate a lot of that work. Now, we haven't finalized the look of the exhibit. We haven't finalized a lot of things, so things might change, and there might be big chunks of work that we have to pick up. But
apart from we had to do the same amount of work, if not more, searching for the venue. Surprisingly, that was just as much work as the first one, if not more, this time, because we actually looked at within about a 6-hour drive of here and a few places in Southern California and even Oregon. We looked at a lot of different event spaces, and it's hard to find a large space with parking.
It's also hard to find a large space that is interesting.
With any character, with any natural light, with any of that. And we're still open to looking at different places in the future. We're not set in any forever home until we get really happy with something. And we'll find out how this place goes. But we're always kind of keeping one eye towards that. But that was a big chunk of the work we've been doing. I know late last year, we spent a lot of time working on contract and venue searches. But wow, we don't need to worry as much about insurance or contracts or getting a website up and running. And so it feels good every single day of the week that we've got all that stuff figured out from last time.
It doesn't sound like a very exciting.
No. And we are looking for volunteers, for people to help with, big chunks of running this. Lots of people want to volunteer at the event. We actually did great with that last time. What we're looking for are people that can take on responsibility between now and the event. And that's what we'll be probably putting requests to the community sooner rather than later for that. But that's why we haven't done it so far, is we've been focused on nuts and bolts issues. Where will the event be? What is the event going to look like? Who's going to participate? And then we can start backing into these broader aspects like ticket sales or volunteers.
Yeah, and earlier when I said automate as much as possible, that's also kind of some of the stuff that we've been working on. Just, just like buying something online, the fewer hands that have to touch it or the fewer computers that it has to go through, it's just makes everything easier when you can do it yourself. Buy your tickets, buy your vendor tables, and there's all kinds of stuff on the back end. And we're trying to minimize the amount of admin work I think that was one of the biggest things that we spent time on, was just literally admin / customer service last time.
Yeah. Answering emails was a big chunk of where our time went 2 years ago. And we're trying to figure out how there to not be that this time.
So if you haven't seen the website, you should go there, because what you'll notice is that the entire website is just one giant FAQ. I literally,
there's a lot of questions on there.
I literally wrote like an FAQ for the vendors, an FAQ for everything, and that doesn't cover everything, but there's a lot of information on the site.
And we'll be adding a lot more as it's available. We have not mentioned what we're doing on Saturday night, and that's because our plans are still kind of up in the air about that. We've got some ideas for banquet or banquet-like activities Saturday night. We will plan something. We don't have that nailed down. That's one of the things on our list to get to.
Yeah, because everyone's going to be here Saturday night, so we might as well at least make a suggestion for what they can do.
Exactly. And yeah, that's really the only big piece of the event that we didn't really cover.
Yeah, so we're hoping to do another podcast or two before the event, and the more automation we get in place, the more time we'll have to do that.
Exactly. And so do check in with either of us individually or through the website. We will be sharing all that information at pacificbonsaiexpo.org.
Or potentially on another podcast.
And on another podcast, and it'll be on our Pacific Bonsai Expo Instagram account. I think we've got a Facebook page. I'll be mentioning it in the Bonsai Tonight blog. Something might sneak into a Bonsai video on YouTube. We've got a lot of angles to cover in terms of getting in touch with folks about this.
That's everything for now, then.
All right. Thank you all so much for joining in.
Thank you.
The music on today's podcast was brought to you by the fine folks at Blue Dot Sessions. Check them out at www.sessions.blue.